Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I'm one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and I'm here with a first-time guest, and I can't believe this is this individual's first time on the podcast, but I am very excited to talk to him tonight because he has a new comic book that's out with Morgan Beem. It's fantastic. It has a lot of stuff in it that I really want to talk about. It's called The Author Immortal. Please welcome to the podcast, Frank Barbiere. Frank, how you doing today?
So happy to be here, doing well. Can't believe it's March already, and that's my vibe.
Yeah, time moves way too fast anymore. But what
Yeah,
what are you gonna
I feel
do?
like I saw someone in town when they were coming through with their band back in like November, and I was like, they told me they were gonna be back in March, and I was like, that's so far away. And I'm like, look at the calendar. I'm like, damn, that's next week. So, here I
Yeah.
am,
Well,
old man talking about time and the weather is who I've become.
oh,
Weather's just
me too.
I live in Austin, Texas, so weather's been fine. I've been talking to my friends on the East Coast, and they're like, "It's snowing again." I'm like, "I forget how that goes," but,
Yeah. I just got back from a trip. I was out for work in San Diego, which was beautiful, and then my wife and I took our 2 kids to Disneyland for 2 days and missed the snowstorm here on the East Coast. I mean, my wife's from New Jersey. She's from Cherry Hill, and
Oh, nice.
her mother was watching our dog, and I think they got like 14 inches while we were away in sunny California. So I was kind of happy to be away for that. But yeah, I too am an old man, unfortunately, that talks about the weather and how quickly time passes. And my wife just said the other day we were talking about the early days of the pandemic, and she said, "Do you remember when it first started?" And we were sitting here thinking, like, 5 years from now, what are we gonna remember? And it's been 5 years, and I said, "Hun, it's been 6."
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 'cause, I've been in Austin, and we moved down here in May 2019, and it blows my mind that's about to be 7 years now in 2 months as, it does not feel like that, but we also locked down pretty hard for, like, 2 years, so that feels like
Oh, yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah.
But alas, I did get inspired to make some comic books while I was down here to segue, so
No, that's a perfect segue, to, the author Immortal because, um, and I want you to talk about the story, what it's about a little bit, but, when I first saw it, it had a lot of things in it that I thought, that I liked, that kinda spoke to me, the idea of, because we meet Hector Ramirez, and he there's this it's about this series of books that he read as a kid that meant a lot to him, and that's something that, I instantly connected to because I was the type of kid who was a voracious reader. I mean, I still am, but I would, escape into books. I think there was a period of time in grade school where Madeline L'Engle had a stranglehold on me. I read A Wrinkle in Time and A Swiftly Tilting Planet and Many Waters. There's a fourth book I can't remember, but in any event, I totally understood that, and I was very curious about some of the other themes of it, and was excited to talk about it. So, um,
so I thank you for checking it out. I mean, it was a very hard book to reduce to a simple log line because obviously there's a lot more going on than just like the portal fantasy slash like kind of meta fantasy element of it. But it's interesting because like it grew out of just taking back. I had moved down to Austin to work at a game company down here as I was a full-time comic writer for like 5 or 6 years, I can't remember, but around 2017, I was super burnt out, freelance life killing me, like, I hated not having health insurance because America is an insane country with that, and,
yeah,
just, like, no income and not knowing where my money was gonna come from. I didn't get exclusive at Marvel or DC. I had done some stuff at both, and I was just like, "Man," I went to school to be a teacher, so I was like, "Shit, do I have to be a teacher again? Like, should I go teach?" And, I won't rattle on as I told the story many other places, but through some friends, they're like, "Oh, you could write video games." I was like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah, you have a strong enough resume and you know the space." And basically, I spent like a year networking and getting to know people and applying and learning and managed to get a job in 2017. But then we came to Austin in 2019, and I think Violent Love was wrapping up while I was at uh, Activision. But then I really didn't do a lot. I co-wrote some books and just kind of like had some like slow projects that were taking a while to come out. But I was really just kind of tired of constantly pitching miniseries. And I've had a career where I've been very fortunate that I've got to do a lot of my own stuff, which is great. But it started to really just wear on me of like, oh my gosh, I'm putting out a 4 or 5 issue miniseries. Like people like it, I like it. It just doesn't do well enough. It doesn't blow up. It doesn't break through. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, and it really burned me out, long story short. And really with Author Immortal, like I had wanted to do a much more kind of like pseudo literary fiction, like love letter to the unwritten, which is one of my favorite books of all time by Mike Carey and Peter Gross. But I didn't want to just do like a crappy version of their story. Like I needed to find something to say. And the like framing sequence with like the author with Vossler and like kind of this idea that he's using storytelling to I mean, light spoilers, but basically keep his dying daughter alive, which we find out pretty soon in the series, was the like thing I knew I wanted to do, but I didn't have my own in. And then just as I thought about it, and like unfortunately more and more kind of happened with like J.K. Rowling and like just and then Neil Gaiman as well, but that was way later after the fact. These people getting canceled for just terrible views, monstrous behavior. I started thinking like, oh, well, what if like that, like the fact that we're still grappling with the wounds of people who wrote things we cared about really falling out of the public space, becoming straight up villains and people we do not want to associate with, and what happens to the books that we really cared about, which again is very classic death of the author thing, but obviously the name the author immortal is a even play on that. And then the first arc is called
Yeah.
Death of the Author. But really, that's what got me thinking, got me excited about it. And then I had met Morgan as well, and her art is phenomenal and a great co-creator, and just started kind of talking to her about it because the minute I saw her stuff, I was like, oh, that's the person I need to do this. Cause I feel like that, like she will get the vibe of this. She'll be able to make it more interesting than just kind of, I don't know, collaborating with artists is really interesting process. And it is obviously the work comes out and it feels like a combination of both your efforts, but obviously you never know what you're gonna get. But I was really just struck by her work because I had seen it. I had read Swamp Thing Twin Branches, which she had done, and we had started emailing. And Morgan had a bunch of projects kind of lined up because she did Crashing at IDW with Matthew Klein and Trina Farrell, which was a great book. And then she was wrapping up a graphic novel that came out called it's called You Belong Here with Sarah Miller that came out on for a second. That's a great book. But we had just been talking about this, working on it, and finally, like, gosh, I think it was like maybe like 2 years ago, we really started working on it. And our issue one is like a long 40-page issue. And again, Morgan hand watercolors every page. So it took a little to get into the swing of it, but she is an absolute workhorse and was able to do it like kind of on a generous monthly comic schedule, which is about 5 weeks, which is still insane per issue. So once we hit the ground rolling, we were just kind of going, and the book was the book. But as I said, and then I was also really excited to collaborate with a few other people, Hassan Atsme El How, who did the lettering I'd want to work with forever, and he did a great job. Sasha Head, who did all our design, I had worked with in passing a few times, and she does a lot of Three Worlds, Three Moons, and I worked there with Mike, John Hickman, Nick Spencer, and I would see a lot of the design she did there, and I was like, "Oh, Sasha, you should work on my new book." And luckily, her schedule was open too. And then an editor named Arden Ripley joined us, who was fantastic, and they were someone I kind of was introduced to from games, but it was nice to just kind of have another person to kind of read the scripts and talk through and make sure it was all on the up and up. Because one thing people always tell me is like, "Oh, like what did you bring from working in video games so long now?" And I'm like, honestly, like having good editorial and other people to trust. Cause again, I've always like self edited a lot of my books and I know what I am good at, but I feel like sometimes when you're assigned an editor at a company, you kind of get what you get, and you don't know if they share your taste, if they are just going to note you to death. But for me, finding really kind of competent editors whom I align with to edit my own work now has really helped me a lot because no one is perfect, and you can always kind of use an extra set of eyes. So Arden's been fantastic with that and helped shape the book. But now
Oh,
I've
that's
wandered
awesome.
away from the question, but long story short, it all kind of came together, and this was like the one book that I had still wanted to do, and it's fascinating. So we finally shipped it in October of 2025, which was a few months ago. We just finished our first 5 issues, and we'll have the trade out, think in April for comic shops, and then May bookstores. But it's weird to talk about in past tense already because that stuff had all been going on for so long, and it's all just kind of whoosh. But it's killing me because I mean the comic market has been up and down, and when you do stuff at Image, it is an independent project, and obviously we've had a lot of really good like excitement with the TC stuff in the market, and those are great books. New people are coming in stores, but there are so much product on the shelf. It has been so hard to kind of capture monthly interest when you basically have a week, and we're glad for the people reading our book. The people who read it like it. We love it. We're super excited, but we are really hoping that we can kind of get the trade pushed a little harder to people who maybe have missed it in the flurry of the fall. That uh again, it's you have like a week on comic book shelves, and it
Yeah.
is very cruel to be like, oh well, we were there, did you not see it? And as I said, the trade is a nice opportunity and to get to bookstores because of the content of this book too. I think like I'm hoping like as well as comic book fans, I'm hoping some more kind of book readers can discover it, and people who are maybe aging out of YA a little bit or just like kind of interested in the bigger discourse around kind of both fantasy and kind of death of the author. Like, oh, what does it mean to kind of leave stories behind? Can you and how does it affect you? Blah blah blah. So it is.
Yeah,
Uh,
you pack a lot into that to talk about the first issue. Like, you really do pack a lot uh into the first issue, and I have to imagine that like I would think that that would be one of the toughest things to really like, between you and Morgan and Arden, the editor, to really kind of streamline and figure out the pacing and everything you want to have in there because very, you have to acclimate the reader to, who the characters are. And you have, there's a bunch of different things that you've talked about that, that are at play, not just the death of the author, but you are also dealing with this the Deb Luckwell character who hires Hector and is very problematic. You have, Hector's relationship with his kid. So there is a ton in there. The issue never feels weighed down. I love Morgan's art,
Yeah,
especially
I mean,
because
getting
from
so
the
much of it up front is beautiful, and
yeah,
he really drew a lot of pain in the butt stuff. Like she did a lot of establishing shots of like the house, the libraries, and I was like, damn.
yeah,
I think unfortunately I gave her like a cityscape too when we show that little like interstitial scene with the demons attacking someone. I was just like,
right.
sorry, there was so much here, but no, she is amazing, and truly, like I said, it's been a gift to collaborate with her and see those pages come in because they look so good.
In terms of like because in kind of like the very well, once you get past like the London 1953 cold open, which we see the Vossler, the author that Hector admires, you see that uh Al, I guess Al's mom is reading a story, and the book kind of leaks, and you have these, creatures in it that I feel like Morgan's art, because it is like finished in watercolor, like did the watercolor really shape that type of design, because it really works so well together when
Yeah.
you really have stories bleeding into each other, and you kind of have the same thing like literally with the art.
As I said, I mean, I try to pick my collaborators pretty carefully and people I know are going to do something cool. So I'm very like free with my like design work. Like again, it is the artist who's doing a lot of the visual design, and with those, I literally just described it. I'm like, like ink angels, I call them. Like they weep out of like the book as ink, and then they should look like kind of horrific angels. And just Morgan went to town with that. It's funny because
Yeah.
those first 5 pages were the pitch of the book, and Morgan actually redrew them. So there was a different design. They used to have
Oh,
eyes,
wow.
but when she
Okay.
redid it, she was like, "Oh no, I really want to redo the design," and she really nailed it. And again, it was one of those things where uh as I said, I just knew because she had told me because she had come off drawing You Belong Here, which is a very like slice of life, like kind of like teen romance story that mainly takes place in like a school. And she's like, I just want to draw some creepy, crazy stuff. And I was like, well, we will have an opportunity. And she really has done just a great job with the creature design. Because as I said, I feel like I write like full scripts, so I'll write like panel descriptions, like page one, panel one, two, three, four, right, and like what's there. But like with visual
Yeah.
design, I really just like to give my collaborators only as much as they need. And as I said, she definitely has a talent and a passion for cool monster and world design. And that's the trickiest thing for me. The biggest thing was like because there are obviously some generic elements to our story with like a portal fantasy, like we did not invent that. It's a very tropey thing, but I was like, oh well, our big thing is one, like the main world of these books, which is called like Grindel, for the world of the Mage's Apprentice, is our kind of in-world made up old kind of fantasy novel. I was like, it'll clearly like have some staples of fantasy, but I want it to look unique. And then also when we go there in the present, it is a ruined world. So like there's weird shit happening here. And Morgan really delivered on that because again, as a writer, like I am very much like I know what I want to do. I've been doing this 20 years. I know how to do it, but there still is always like discovery and then like a little bit of like anxiety of like, oh, I hope people get what we're doing here. But issue one came out really fast for me. Like I think I just like sat down and wrote it in like a stream of consciousness, like excited bit. And obviously we edited it a bit after, but after Morgan agreed to do the book. And I am, even though we start ours with a frame with technically a little bit of a flashback, but I'm very adamant about beginnings and so many comics, and I've done it a million times. And I know why people do it. It's because, especially creator owned books, the first 5 pages are the pitch. So people want to have an action scene most of the time. But like, I hate every
Yeah.
story that does like, we're going to show you the most exciting part and then jump back to the beginning. I'm like, no, stories begin at the beginning. Like, let's start, like, pick the moment. And with us, it's Hector going to pitch Deb, basically. Like, that is a moment that I felt like that is a moment where we can establish who he is, what's happening, where he's going, what he wants, what he's trying to do. And to me, that is so, so important because I feel like the stuff we hit on in issue 5 and like where the arc goes, like if you do not properly set it up and give the reader like a breath to just like take it in, it's not going to land. And there's a lot of talk about like monthly comics versus like trades and like writing towards a trade, trying to write monthly comics. And really, like I tried to write this book as like monthly issues feeling like solid units, but like I sort of can't end up helping myself to try to give each one at least a little bit of a distinct feel. And then ultimately the cliffhanger, but it's just so hard to please everyone. Ultimately, I think it will read the best in the trade, but we do things like again, we put the backup stories in 2, 3, and 4 as well, which was great to work with Kate Case now and Lauren Affey, another team who came in and basically did our in-world stories. It's basically pages from the Mage's Apprentice, but also we have the character kind of being a little bit self-aware as we discover what's going on there. But you know, it's a fascinating thing, and for me with this book, I'm very clear about like what I'm trying to do with it, where it's going, and obviously what it explores. So the other big thing that I've learned to push on, especially with my creator-owned work, is to try to keep it like very unique and very uh outside genre. And it's so funny because like I saw someone say like an issue 2, like I know where this is going, and I was just like, buddy, like I can't tell you, you have no clue where this is going because I've like really sat down and I know what the obvious version of this book is. And this is why I say too, like taking our time, like there's a version, and again, editorializing, there's a bad version of this book where they get to the fantasy world on page 5 where like, oh, you start with Hector and he just like stumbles in and then he's there. And that's not the version I was excited by. That's not the version I wanted to tell. Like, and again, I feel like there was a small. it was really fascinating because I could talk about it a little past tense, and I look at, like, what people are saying because I think it's important. I like getting the feedback of monthly comics, seeing what monthly readers say, but, like, there was a weird, like people were like, "Issue 1 was really cool, but, like, not a lot happened." Then people were like, "Whoa, too much action in issue 2," and which I found baffling, and then issue 3, like, people came back around, and then I actually didn't see a lot of people talking about issue 4 and 5. The people I saw, like, liked it, but, like, it is interesting because I wrote 1 and 2, like, almost in one big piece because we do so much front loading of kind of the necessary character work and almost real world building. 2, I really wanted to have action in and show also Alethea, the barbarian character, comes in, and we want to do, like, fight scene there, but, I don't know. I'm rambling about it, but it's just always fascinating to me because, like, I am a very, like, meticulous, like, craft-oriented writer, and, like, I swear to you, like, I looked at the shape of every one of these issues and made sure, like, there is stuff happening. There's, like, units of storytelling being doled out. So it's
Yeah,
really fascinating to me to hear when someone's like, "I don't think anything really happened in this issue," and I'm like, "You sure?"
yeah,
Like, it did and again, I say that self-critically too. I'm not perfect. Like, I know sometimes, like, if I wanna do one thing and the audience is getting that, I'm like, "Okay, maybe we didn't deliver it," but, I'm super happy with
yeah,
the work we've done here, and again, it is just very much what it is, and I don't know. I don't want to speak to like things like, oh, who I think this book is for, who I don't think this book is for, but obviously like is heavily influenced by the unwritten, by kind of some more literary comics, and Morgan style definitely leans more towards indie comics. So and this is when I get to just like stuff with the market. It's like, yes, I love that people are in there, but I just don't think there's a direct line from like very traditional superheroes to our book yet. I would love that line to exist, but again,
yeah,
I'm very sensitive to like, oh yeah, like and with our trade, I've been very adamant, like, please don't like rack this next to Iron Man in the bookstore. Like, please put it in the more like indie graphic novel section if you can, because like it is a very different audience. And again, I don't mean that in any kind of elitist or weird way, but it's stuff that I want to explore outside of kind of other genre conventions. Like I love superhero comics. I love Marvel and DC. Like I've written a bunch. I've
yeah,
written a lot of action comics, but with this, like really, I wanted to explore some of my more like literary interests as well as modern relevant interests with kind of exploring again just what it means to have to deal with a collaborator or writer who has basically done like a heel turn on culture
yeah,
and, their readers, and, again, not shy to say, like, obviously, Deborah Luckwell is heavily referential to J.K. Rowling, like, did a lot of research about
oh
this,
yeah. I
Hector's,
loved I loved Al's I love Al's reaction
yeah,
when when they find out that that you know when Hector tells Al like, oh, we gotta go to England, and Al's like, who's paying for it? And he
yeah,
tells him.
but it's just so funny to me because I mean, I know, like, a lot of people who this is, like, an issue with now, like, who will have, like, kind of teenage kids who, again, just either identify as trans or non-binary and, like, have grown up in a world where they don't have the attachment to some of the material their parents have, especially in the world of Harry Potter, and, like, will be like,
Yeah,
"What the fuck, dad? Like, why do you read that? Like, why do you even care?" And again, it's very valid, but there is, like, a difficulty there, and I don't see people grappling with this in work, which is so interesting. There's no one really putting this into storytelling right now, and when I say, like, the book engages with death of the author, I'm not gonna solve it for you. I'm not gonna tell you, like, "Hey, this is what you should do. Go burn your books and never think about it again," but thematically, I really did find an angle that I am happy with and something to say that I think is additive to a little bit of a practical level, but also a character level that works with kind of identity, that works with kind of grappling with what you love. And
yeah,
again, I'm not going to sit here and explain it all, but ultimately that's where the story goes and what it's for. And I was really happy to find a way to basically use kind of this conversation as a way to engage with it and hopefully help people feel seen in grappling with it rather than me telling them what to think, but just understand like this is difficult for a lot of different people from a lot of different angles.
yeah,
And it isn't something that is easily like as that's my big fear. I didn't want people to think I'm telling you how to engage with this, but I just want to acknowledge like, hey, this is a again, the fanciest way we'll say is like a cultural wound. Like I know a lot of people like who had a fucking Harry Potter excuse me, I don't know. Can I swear here? I'm
Sure, you can
yeah,
swear. That's
swear,
fine.
but
Go right
I know
ahead.
people who have Harry Potter tattoos who have a different gender identity and now have grown up and see like, "Oh, wow, like great. This is my life now. This thing that I loved so much
Right.
is now
Yeah.
here." And it's in the generational bit of it too is funny. I knew people who like named their kids after Game of Thrones characters and stuff, and then Game of Thrones
Yeah.
ended up being the TV show ended up being badly. So there was a lot there, and that's
Right.
why I love that Hector basically named his kid after the main character from the novels he loved, which I find such a
Yeah.
silly.
I mean, my wife will deny it, but my oldest daughter is named after a literary character. No, no, my wife says that's not why she agreed to the name, um, but my oldest daughter is Charlotte because one of my favorite books is Charlotte's Web. I haven't heard anything bad about E.B. White. I think I'm
Yeah, I was gonna
safe
say,
at this
seems like
point.
a pretty safe one at least. Yeah, yeah.
So, but it is something like in the conversation that people struggle with. And on the one hand, it's like, well, look, that is whether or not you have some type of like parasocial relationship with this author or whatever the situation might be. I think some folks are like, well, it's easy to solve. You read it, then like that's fine. You don't have to buy their stuff anymore. You don't have to you know, listen to that author who wrote the thing you loved. But I do feel like there are people that struggle with it because there's a part of it that's like, well, they wrote this thing and like she wrote this thing that I loved and it meant a lot to me. And well, what does that mean that I love this thing that is now
Yeah,
written by this person who I disagree with on such a fundamental level about of a
and that
very
and
about the right of other people to, like, live their life.
yeah, and that is the bigger question because there's a very reductive view of death of the author that I think like because again it comes from an old essay like that I think it's Bartles. I can't remember what his name is, but like the internet kind of misunderstood it a bit, and I think the rolling stuff like also futs with that. But just the idea that like, hey, you can completely separate an author from their work. It's like that is not what Death of the Author is saying, like, that in
Yes.
any way, shape, or form. Like, that is a weirdly extrapolated view. It's just this idea of, like, what happens when you engage with the work and escapes the author's intention, blah, blah, blah. And that is the
Yeah.
fascinating part to me that I think that actually merited, like, exploration in a work. And ultimately, as I said, I think there's, like, a positive thematic outcome in our story. It does not happen in issue 5. Sorry, there's a huge cliffhanger at issue 5, the end of volume 1. But because and that's also why I said, like, this is a story that I want to have space to grow and very much also a love letter to those like late 90s, early 2000 Vertigo, like 60 issue series that had space to kind of tell a full story that kind of went for something. Because again, the bad version of the story, 5 issues in, like, oh, like Hector kind of changes and isn't messed up anymore. Now forgives him and everyone's happy. And that is not where a
Yeah.
story goes. The story is not about redeeming Hector, like it is about him living with the choices he's made. And again, a flawed character, but I'm not also trying to assassinate the guy. He has value too. Like he cares about his kid. He's just trying to like he loves things, and it's been fascinating too. I've had a lot of people be like, "Oh, these characters are unlikable," and I'm just like, "Sorry, they're not perfect. Like they all have shit going on, and the story is about
Yeah.
them growing and
The word
changing.
pro
Hopefully, so we'll see what
right.
happens." But
The word protagonist doesn't mean likable, guys. I'm
no.
sorry.
And I mean, like, the other thing, and Morgan made me laugh when we were out saying, like, we are not looking to defend or paint the Luckwell character in a positive light. She is a villain in our book and clearly wrong. And issue 6, when we get to it, like, is very much her backstory, which again is interesting, but really supposed to be an exercise on how someone can end up like this. And it's not like a huge like, oh, it's because like they fell down a well. It's like, no, some people just have terrible opinions and want to tell you about this and feel empowered. And what do you do past that versus just trying to explain or redeem
Yeah.
anyone who is awful? And it's the kind of thing where I again I did a lot of research on this. I think it's fascinating. I mean, the end result is horrible, but just that whole thing of like authorship, what it means to put yourself out there. And again, I teach a lot of writing and I am a big advocate of like I would rather your work say something and maybe be a little sloppy or be a little on the nose, but have like thematic value and something you believe in than not. And not everyone thinks that. I think it's been a very popular move in modern fiction to be like, let me just be entertained. I don't want to take my medicine when I'm reading, but I am very not for that. So I do think that like work is very much an expression of the author, of who they are and what they care about. And you can't separate that as much as some people want. It's not to say you can't take something from it they didn't intend, but that's stuff that I grapple with. And really, as I said, I'm here to kind of paint a perspective on it. And sorry if you don't like it, but I wrote the book, so you're getting my opinion whether
Yeah.
you like it or not.
You mentioned the unwritten, twice so far, which is a Vertigo book. Mike, you already said Mike Carey and I think it's Peter
And Peter
Gross.
Krause, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so what was it about the unwritten that I've I have not read all of the unwritten, which I do want to go and do. I've been playing catch up since I got back into comics a number of years ago, so I haven't hit all of the Vertigo series. I've read volume 1 though. And you did not just make a bad version of that, so don't
Thank you. I
worry.
mean, yeah, yeah.
I mean, but for listeners, if you also have not, read the unwritten, the long and short of the idea is like I think Tommy Taylor, it was basically like the inspiration for a children's book. I think Mike had said before that he was thinking of A. A. Milne's son. Um,
Mm.
and and it starts with that idea and like goes on from there.
And it
Um,
branches a lot more into like a treatise on like almost all of literature and like kind of like, oh, like kind of places where like the literary touches the real world and what does it mean like and they do their own thing, but just the whole
yeah,
like idea of like an author infusing power into his child, as I said, was very much the like Bossler angle. And then, not to spoil the unwritten, but the titular unwritten is a cabal that kind of controls the world through stories. And we have our kind of
right.
own villains, but they are not a cabal who controls the world through stories. Is that was the big thing of like literally don't want to do like the titular villains of that. And as I said, it's fascinating because like it's an exercise in when you're writing anything that has like layers to peel back or mystery. Like I think it rewards rereading, but people will have questions up front. And really, by the end of issue 5, you get basically introduced to a new like proper antagonist who is not Luckwell, someone in the story as well who was not visible. And then we also have these people who have appeared in shadow speaking to Luckwell in the real world who seem almost a
Right.
little more like fantasy-esque as well. And then we also have the Ink Angels who we've not really delved into, but like trust me, like we have very solid lore and explanations for all these things. It's just going to take some time because ultimately what arc 1 becomes is the story of Hector and Al being pulled into this story and discovering Alethea, who again, I was just very inspired by this idea of like the portal fantasy of it all is like, oh, again, imagine you got pulled into your favorite book and you expected to see basically Hermione, but you got a barbarian instead. Like that, like whiplash,
Yeah.
I thought was very interesting, especially considering Hector named his own kid after this character, then sees them and they are completely unexpected and different. And uh, we really peel a lot of that back, I think, in 4. It's like the one you didn't read, like, he literally gets a beat to be like, "Alethea, what is going on with this world?" And she at least speaks from her perspective about what she thinks is going on and what is happening. But as I said, it's something like it's a book I've definitely done the most, like, pre-writing for, like, and really just thought about, like, "Hey, like, if we did this as a macro series, what should we plan right now? What should we do here?" And, I will say very publicly, we are unfortunately taking a pause after issue 1. Morgan has some other stuff that she has on her plate, and we are just kind of giving the trade some time to hit. But we are
Yeah.
hopefully going to be back with volume 2 much sooner than later. But we had wanted to just kind of roll right into it, but looking at like the climate, looking at just kind of where we're at with our monthlies, we were like, let's just take a breath. Like, I really believe we can find an audience with the trade. But again, trade ends on a huge cliffhanger, so I'm sorry if you have to wait, but I think it's still worth getting on board. And certainly, if you want to tweet at me about it and tell me you enjoyed it and are waiting for more, maybe we'll get there sooner than later. But it is the kind of thing where as I said, I came in and I'm like, we want to do 60 issues of this. In a perfect world where we had sold like hundreds of thousands of copies of the first issue, we could have built a support to do it immediately, but book did what we thought it would do. So we're kind of just taking a moment and being like, okay, let's be smart. Let's not kill
Yeah.
ourselves. Let's not just rush it out for the sake of having it out, because it's also one of those things when we were talking about like, oh my gosh, should we just go right into issue 6? What should we do? Like, we needed a little bit of a break as well. And I'm like, well, the book will live forever in collections, and I would much rather we take our time and do it right because it's a story we care about than just try to like, oh my god, need to stay visible on the shelf or else we're gonna lose momentum. So it's one of those things where
I
we
do.
we want to do it
I mean,
right rather than fast, if that makes sense.
yeah. No, it does. And I mean, I've said it before on the podcast, like just talking to different creators that, you know, I, uh, I, uh, I don't see, and we don't see a lot of longer running, series anymore. I mean, outside of like the big two, like just that continues the numbering of things, but very few series get more than one arc, which so you have a series that you really like, and it follows a very consistent pattern. And it doesn't mean you can't tell a great story in 5 or 6 issues, but there was something about, you know, letting a series breathe. And also sometimes you would, when you just get like a really wild, like issue, or have a
Yeah.
guest artist come in, like and very few series right now are, I think, even like it creator owned, especially into the 30s. I mean, I can think of
Yeah.
like Something is Killing the Children right now, I think is in the 40s, and that's the first one that comes to mind, which I like it.
Yeah, if
Um,
my buddy Will's book, Ice Cream Man, has done
oh, Ice Cream
a
Man,
lot, yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
funny,
they've done a lot.
W. Maxwell Prince, my roommate in college. I've known him forever, so,
Oh,
I've
okay.
seen him doing that, so that's managed. Well, and again, I won't get too much into the business of it, but, like, truly, and I knew this coming in, the game has been for a long time because we did Five Ghosts back in 2013, was very thankful for the crowd. We did 17 issues of that, and by the time 17 was rolling around, we were really just, like, not doing a lot monthly. I mean, we all now wish we had stuck with it and gotten a few more trades, but it was our first book. We were very tired. It was a lot of almost like 3 or 4 years worth of work despite only being 17 issues. But, and then when I did Violent Love, we did 10, but, like, the, like, age-old thing is, like, you try to just hit so hard with issue 1 so you can kind of build your war chest of money, especially at Image. You kind of make what you earn there. Like, if you sold 2 billion copies, you would make a lot of money, but
Yeah.
you kinda put that into the war chest to, like, support the book going on, like, to pay for the production of the book, basically, to pay the people drawing it and everyone, maybe the writer one day too, who could say? But, it is just one of those self-perpetuating things where, like, it gets to a point where there's not monthly income coming in from the book, and this is the hardest thing to tell people because so many people are like, "Oh, I checked out issue 1, I'm gonna buy the trade." I'm like, "Really wish you would have bought the issues because that is money in our pocket to do more," but
Yeah.
again, I can't force the economic truth of them. And as I said, this is not our first series. We knew it was going to go like this. We knew what was happening, and as I said, I was hoping that maybe there's a chance we would get like such a hard spike that we would have so much that we could just barrel through. But again, the book did well, but not so well that we became invincible. Saying like, not the book invincible, I mean financially invincible, and saying, hey, we can do this as long as we need to do. Like, but as I
Yeah.
said, it is
Yeah. But
there is a plan for it, and volume 2, I'm hoping, by the end of the year we're back to it. But as I said, Morgan has some cool new stuff she's doing as well, and then again, I've started working on a few new books too, which is cool. So, but this is a book we deeply care about, and if anything, as I said, the trade window is very interesting. I really have a plan to like push the trade like in ways that I normally wouldn't if we were just doing comic book stores, and just like get the story out there because I think there are a lot of people who it could resonate with who weren't necessarily weekly comic book store customers. And I love weekly comic
yeah.
book store customers, but that is a very specific customer right now. It's not necessarily the same as someone who's at a bookstore, the same as someone who's online. And I put a lot of thought
Right.
into thinking about how can we capture maybe more of an audience.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good idea. I think that's folks sometimes don't think about that, in terms of the not only the economics of it, but who are the people that, you know, what is the Venn diagram of people that go to a comic book shop, people that will back a crowdfunder, people
Yeah.
that will go into, they're still going into the bookstore, they're still ordering online from, from Bookshop or Books a
Yeah.
Million or whatever it might be. But I it's funny something you said earlier that you had seen or someone said something to you or you saw something online about the characters being some of the characters or all the characters being
Being
unlikable because
unlikable. Yeah, yeah.
I mean I liked Hector. I mean I'm three
No,
issues
please,
in.
I'm glad.
I
Yeah, I
but
mean,
I liked Hector. I
he
mean
has redeeming
he's not
qualities.
but he's not I mean, he's clearly not perfect. I mean, we see right away from and it's I love those I love little moments in a comic where you learn so much about a character and because it's a visual medium like you know, as writers, sometimes it's like, well, we got to have it like on the
No.
page, but like when you can do something like he gets a text from I don't know, one of his college students and
Yeah.
like you know right away like that he is talking to somebody who is his fiance and he gets a text from somebody else about his office hours and it is you know from seeing that a great deal of things about Hector. I love little moments like that.
And it's the kind of thing where like and it's funny, like this is not like a one-off. Like there is a moment in issue 5 that pays off on that as well. Like we're not just putting
Oh,
this out there for no
okay.
moment. Like the book is written with a lot of intentionality, but at the same time, like it was really fascinating talking about issue 1 with a few people because some people I talked to were like, "What an absolute fucking horrid piece of shit! Like worst dude on the planet." And I'm like, a valid reaction, but like, yes, he is cheating on his spouse, but also this
Yeah,
fictional character is not the first person who has ever cheated on their spouse before. Like I know I don't condone it, but I know people who have done that in the real world, and like it is a part
right.
of life that is difficult. But that, as I said, that's the kind of thing of like texturing to me where like clearly I'm not condoning this, but like I'm also not trying to like bury him. It's just like this is commentary on the times. There's people who and especially when we get to issue 3, it's not an excusing of who he is, but I was glad and that's why I was laughing when someone was like, "Oh, clearly this is gonna be a redemption arc for Hector." This is not a redemption arc for Hector. That's not what issue 1 is. I'm not trying to show that this man can be great and do bad things, but also just create some actual texture of like, hey, like maybe he acts out because of how he was raised, of something that happened to him. What are his values? How did you end up this way? And I think there's just
Yeah,
like a lot more interest there to look at in terms of, oh, it's not just that they're unlikable, it's that they're flawed. And I hope like again, the kind of reader I hope who is engaging with the work, like is intrigued by that. And again, I'm not asking them to excuse his behavior or condone it, but like, again, he's not Goody McGooderson who's going to save a cat from the tree and just
yeah,
like be out there. And as I become older in my life, I'm more interested in telling stories about people who feel a little more conflicted and real than just like Captain
yeah.
America. Like,
Well, I mean, you write something and you and Morgan create this thing, and like you said, with a lot of intentionality. And so it's there for a reason. It's not there for like just a gag or as a throwaway. And so, I'll wait until I read issues 4 and 5 to, completely make up my mind about
and think
about
of it,
Hector. But
Frank, you dipshit, you were wrong.
the well, for me, in terms of the first issue, and especially when we see how uh Hector reacts, um when I think his fiance Sheila tells him about this meeting with Luckwell, and it's probably not really with her. Like, who knows what she wants.
No.
Eh, but to me, it came across as like another little personality detail. Like Hector instantly conjured in my mind to try and like flesh out the character of Hector as somebody who is probably engaging in behavior with a student because he seems like somebody who can't believe that a student would want to engage with him a little bit. There's some weird type of because you think of the traditional picture of an author as somebody like Luckwell, somebody with like an ego. And Hector seems like a bit of a mess for a lot of reasons, which is one of the reasons I liked him because I like
It's
messes,
one
I
of those
guess.
things where, like, people don't understand power dynamics sometimes, like, because there are people who manipulate power dynamics, but then there's people who suddenly are like, "Oh, wait, like, why am I getting this attention? Like, oh, I
Yeah,
feel and that is definitely more of the he's not meant to be, like, some malicious, like, philanderer, but, like,
right.
obviously it has some judgment issues, but it is one of those things where,
Certainly.
like, that is a thing, and again, I mean, I've known a lot of professors, I've known a lot of people who've gotten famous in different mediums, and
Right.
it really is supposed to be a little bit of a foil to Luckwell, who is someone who became extremely famous author, and her decision was like, "Okay, I'm going to, 1, like, put my dangerous, like, anti-trans platform out into the world because I think I'm right about everything, and 2, I'm going to pursue immortality because that is, like, again, the fictional part of our story, and
Yeah.
not spoil it, but we see her clearly dealing with some kind of weird ethereal
Yeah.
cult as
There's
well, and
something
that is
going
the
on.
and it's the different kind of levers of power that people use, and as I said, that's what interests me as a writer in 2026, like, and again, if it is off-putting to you as a reader, your choice, you don't have to engage with it, but it's not something that is meant to, like, as I said, we're not trying to condone a behavior, but I'm not leaning away from it, like, this is we live in a pretty
Yeah.
complicated world, and this book is about, like, grounded in a sense where we're trying to engage with that stuff, not just pretend like, oh, like, a story is just this perfect little fun space where everyone is perfect and we want to see the good guys beat the bad. I joke about it a lot and I hate using it as a pejorative, but again, I grew up in the 80s and like when I see just like a good guys beat bad guys story, I say it feels like a Saturday morning cartoon. And like, yeah, there's value there. It's escapism, it's fun. Like sometimes we need that, but like really
Yeah.
where I've leaned towards is I don't want just like clean endings like that. I don't want to just do like story of the week, like we beat the bad guy, let's go home. And I think the industry at large has kind of moved away from that, like in terms of, well, not everywhere, but I'm saying like I think that's when stuff can get a little more interesting. And for me, that's when I really started reading comics intensely around 2000, and like 'cause I grew up reading comics, like, passively, but around 2000 was really when I had, like, a weekly comic shop that I was going to, and, like, I finally, like, read, like, Watchmen, like, I was reading, like, Ultimate Spider-Man and Powers from Bendis, and just, like, Morrison's run on X-Men and stuff was all starting, like, I feel like it was people pushing past those boundaries a little bit, and, I mean, Watchmen was obviously 80s and different, but for me, it was new because I just read more traditional superhero comics, and just seeing people, like, I mean, people. See Alan Moore, one of a great writers of our medium, but like seeing
Yeah.
what you could do in the space when you don't want to just like play with the toys was always very appealing to me. And that's the stuff that kind of made me want to be a writer and actually work in the medium. So
Yeah. I mean, I think there is value to just, sometimes I do just want to see the bad guys get defeated and the
it,
good
it,
guys
it
win.
and as I
And
said,
there's
I
but
don't put that off. Like sometimes, like again, I
right.
love stuff like that too. It's not. I just I worry
But
when and get it.
I
Well,
I also
go for
do enjoy more complex storytelling, complex characters, and I like thematically um exploring the idea of what stories meant to us when we were younger and the hold they have on us. And I also think there's something interesting here just because of as a dad, with two kids and trying to get my kids into some of the stuff that I liked, because
it.
there is a part of it where and because so I find that kind of interesting with Hector and Al engaging the story on that level as well, because I there's stuff that I loved as a kid that meant, like, a ton to me that I wanted to share with my kids, like, before they were even born. I'm like, "One day when I have kids, I'm gonna sit
Yeah,
here, we're gonna watch Back to the Future,"
yeah.
or whatever it might be, um, and they're just some things they are just not interested in, and I never wanted to be, like, the sports dad who was like,
Yeah,
well,
you
I
must.
played
Yeah.
football. I'm gonna make my kids like play football, and I didn't play sports, so I don't but I didn't want to have that mentality with my nerd stuff,
Yeah.
like
No,
the
but in
first time.
that at
So
this there is like a, like, heartwarming value when it does hit in a certain way of like, "Oh, I love this thing, and I wanna see how you will love it because that is a" but again, then the I don't wanna say dark side, but then unfortunately one of the other futures is they don't care or more actively they actively dislike it and try to explain to you
Yeah.
why, especially with
Why
some
it's
of
bad.
my friends who have teenagers. It's very funny, but that really is my goal. Like, not to sound like such a nerd, but like with the lenses of this story, we have the writer Vossler, who had his own child, his own relationship with literature and magic, basically, and how that works. We have Hector and Al as a more modern foil, and then we have uh, Luckwell. We changed her name a few times, so forgive me. I cannot remember. Luckwell is what we ran with. And We have Luckwell in her relationship with literature and no children, but her book is her children, and she wants to be immortal through writing and other means. And it was really fascinating to me as I started putting this stuff down and planning around it, because they are all lenses for how I think people engage with literature, how they engage with legacy, and
Yeah.
as it's rewarding for me to discover this stuff on the page. But like, as I said, I really hope people can give it a shot and check out the first trade. Our cover also is by Yuko Shimizu, whose work I first encountered through the unwritten covers. She did
The
all the
unwritten.
unwritten
Yeah.
covers, so one of my
Yeah.
favorite cover artists. She's the sweetest person. I was so glad to get her to do. It was a variant for number one, and then we did it as the trade as well. And Morgan also has amazing covers, but we both were like, oh, we really want to do Yuko's cover as our trade cover, as it just fits and feels good. And again, my big goal is to have her do all the trades as we go forward. So I'm hoping we could keep on keeping on. But yeah, I think it'll be end of March, early May. I think it'll be out for Free Comic Book Day, which will be great. And
Oh,
yeah,
nice. Great.
we're gonna keep on keeping on. And it's funny. I see we're getting to the wire, so I don't mean to go into plug mode. I'm also
No,
exploring
go
a
right
lot of other
ahead. Plug away. Plug
also
away. Go
exploring a
ahead.
lot of stuff. I'm hoping in 2026 we have an announcement about new Five Ghosts. Like, Chris and I are really trying to get back to that, as we left it hanging and it was a passion project we wanted to do for a long time. And then just like a few other things that I'm still working on. And this is it. I feel like I had a moment of like where I pulled back from telling stories because I didn't know what I cared about anymore or what I really wanted. And I've kind of come back now with a new focus of like, oh, okay, like how can I leave it on the field, so to speak? Like, what are the things that I really feel like I want to say? And it's been really great for me to do that. And as I said, hopefully for readers who are discovering my work or jumping in. And again, I know I really hope we can put Violent Love back into print, a book I did with Victor Santos at Image that I was a huge fan of. I say that, but I love his artwork, so that's why I mean, not a fan of
Yeah,
just the
I
writing,
really I like Victor's.
but
I'm a big
collaborating
fan of
with,
Victor's work
yeah,
as well.
he is tremendous, and I really love the work he did on that book. I'm hoping we can do that as just like a solid 10 issue collection uh, back in print soon as well, because that is a book that was near and dear to my heart, and I hope I can wrangle him to do some new stuff soon too. But yeah, I'm just out here in Author Immortal. I will be beating that drum endlessly. So follow me on socials. I apologize if I post about it a lot, but again, it's a book we deeply care about and we want to get back to it ASAP. So
Look, I tell like newer creators who come on here, and like, because I'll interview anybody from from you, Frank, and who's been in the industry for a while, to Phil Hester's been on, to Jason Aaron, and also guys who you know, it's their first Kickstarter.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I said, look, you you have to at least believe in yourself enough to be a little bit annoying about the stuff. The hardest part is making something. The second hardest part is getting somebody else to read
Listen,
it. So
attention economy is real, man. There's so much stuff out there. And as I said, with a monthly comic too, you're basically on the shelf for a week. Like, don't be embarrassed about beating that drum. And as I said, hopefully your work is something that's important to you. I'd never be mad at you for being excited about something you wrote, Humans of Earth. So get out there. And
yeah, right.
but no, and truly though, it's so great to be here with you, because to get a chance to actually talk about it as well too, and not just turn things into bullet points or like solicits, is fantastic. And again, thank you for checking it out and having good questions. It's a book that, as I said, I know there's a lot there, but I hope that's exciting to people, that it rewards rereads, that you can think about it and talk about it and be intrigued. And again, just absolutely beautiful. Morgan is a god tier artist. I hope she has
Yeah,
nothing but fame
Morgan's
and
work
fortune for
is
her. So
phenomenal. Yeah, I've read the first issue twice already. I really and I'm excited to get into 4 and 5, and then I'll help beat the drum with you because I want to read it. I like to read stuff as a as a trade as well, and Yeah, I love the mixing of real world and fantasy. Like when those two things kind of combine, and I really like the interesting questions that you're asking because I think like recently something like Tom King and Bilquis Evely's Helen of Windhorn kind of like played in that sandbox a little bit,
I
but
was so worried it was
having
gonna be too close when it came out, when he announced that, because we were
I don't
already
think it
working
is.
on this. Oh, no, thank you.
Well,
A beautiful,
I mean,
great book, but
yeah, I loved Helen of Windhorn, but I think it does, you know, it there's some similar ground, but thematically it's doing something different.
yeah.
And Bilquis Evely's art is gorgeous.
So, yeah,
But
and
you
Matt
know, on the other
Lopez,
hand,
the
more
colors there are
more
so good.
yeah, but Morgan's artwork in The Author Immortal is very, is different from Bilquis's, but it's also gorgeous and it works so well with the type of story you are telling and the way the two different worlds in terms of the portal fantasy are kind of like melding together. But yeah, I think you're dealing with different things thematically. They they don't really even feel like two books that are in conversation with each other. They found it sounds like it feels like you're at like an old fashioned salon and everyone's kind of talking about the same thing a little bit, but very
As I
different. You feel
said,
like
that's why this book was so hard to pitch, because again, we pitched it as the portal fantasy, and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah." I mean,
yeah,
and again, Kieran Gillen's doing Die, which is also a portal fantasy, but about gaming, and I was like, "Well, I don't
yeah,
wanna, like, just, like, totally unload on you in a solicit for a shop," but again, it's again, I think all writers are nerds who like writing about writing, so we all have our own angle on that, and as I said, that's why we were so careful to approach this and make sure, like, hey, what do we want to say with this? Is it so it's not just our crappy version of some other story? So
yeah, and it doesn't feel like that at all. Like I really liked it, and I'm really kind of invested at this point after we're really after the first issue, but now definitely after three in terms of the relationship of Hector and Al. And you've given it just enough so far in terms of 1, 2, and 3, and I'm really curious to see what happens in 4 and 5. So even if like you're listening to this and you're like portal fantasies and these other themes, I don't know, like there's something here in terms of this character relationship that I also think is really worthy of diving in and checking it out. And I think it will read beautifully in a trade. And I just checked. It looks like according to Image's website, it'll be out April 8th.
okay, cool.
So, well, Frank, thank you very much for coming on the podcast and talking with me about Author Immortal. I would love to have you, back when to talk more Author Immortal,
And I'll see
Five
if I can
Ghosts or
get
Violent
Morgan
Love.
too. As I said, I know
Yeah.
you would love to come on. I'm sorry we've been all over scheduling, but heck yeah, would love to anytime. Thank you so much, and again, thank you for doing the show. It's you do have a great selection of different guests, which is awesome to see. Because again, we don't need to see more podcasts with Tom King. Just kidding.
I
I
have
did,
I
but
have had I have had Tom on, but it's not just all Tom. So but thank you, Frank. I really appreciate it. I love the book. So
I will
I'll let
send
you
you
know after I
a
read 4
digital
and
trade
5.
as soon as we're wrapped up too, so you can check it out. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I got you. We just made
Thank
the
you.
PDF proof, so
Oh, awesome. Well, listeners, there's going to be links in the show notes so you can follow Frank on social media so you can check out some of Frank's other work, but also let your local comic book shop know that you want a copy of The Author Immortal, the trade. I know it's past final order cutoff when this comes out, but you can still let your local shop know where there's still going to be plenty of places that you're going to be able to order the trade because it's an Image book. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Shout out to my brother Bobby, the Cryptid Creator Corner's #1 most dedicated fan. Bobby listens to all my episodes. And hey, Bob. Yeah. So listeners, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Good night.